Hello, everybody. Looks like we're live. I just wanted to do a quick video basically talking about the composition API, a quick live stream, because I want to start teaching this stuff soon. I feel like I'm finally starting to reach a point where I'm grasping these concepts and I'm ready to kind of explain it to people. So that's what this live stream is all about. It's going to be really relaxed. So, sit back, relax, chill, and follow along with me as I go through some of the stuff with the composition API. So for the most part, we're going to be using Quasar in this video since this is our Quasar cast. And then we're going to move to Vite because there's a couple of new features with the composition API that I want to explore that I can't actually use in Quasar yet, because even though we're on version 3, we haven't upgraded to the latest version of version 3, which makes sense. Sometimes there's a bit of a delay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to say Quasar create, and let's just call this composition API play. That seems appropriate. And we're just going to leave most of this as the default. Maybe we'll say Quasar comp API play. Can I do it like that? Yep. Yeah, let's just leave all of this. ESLint, we might end up using Vuex, though, to be honest. I usually like to just pull it in myself. Sorry, Axios is what I'm talking about. Yeah, let's just bring it in anyway. I don't know where this is going to end up going. Now, I did try and set up Prettier today, so let's use Prettier and hope that all that worked okay. I've just used ESLint in the past. And yes, we're going to use Yarn. And one thing I want to point out, I've got some comments already. Hey, it's Johnny. Good to see you online. I don't think I've ever seen you online whilst I've been doing a live stream. So good to see you. Can't see your screen. Oh, really? Or maybe that was just before. Oh, of course, it's a big freaking image sitting over there. All right, one sec. I've been playing around with the StreamYard. There we go. You should be able to see that now. Currently on vacation, following this session on a terrace in in Romania. Wow, awesome. And D4D, I don't know how to read that, says hello. Hello to you too. There we go. Thank you, Code Django. I don't know how long I might have been sitting around not knowing that if you didn't let me know. All right, let's go ahead and paste that in, jump into the directory, open this in Visual Studio Code. There we go. Now, if you're starting a new project, you probably won't. I'll zoom in a little bit here. You're probably going to want to install Vola. So if I open up Control-Shift-X, my extensions, notice that I've got Vola installed. So what you want to do is you want to disable Vita. So if you've got Vita installed and you're playing with the composition API with a new Vue 3 project, you want to come in here and disable Vita and enable Vola. So Vola has basically got better TypeScript support, and it's going to work a lot better with Vue 3 simply because it was kind of integrated with Vue 3 from the ground up. They say here it's based on @Vue reactivity, and I think there's some cool crap in there that basically allows them to do it a lot faster. So really excited about this project. I'm going to show you some of the cool stuff that we get with Vola later on in this video. So you're going to want to make sure that that's set up properly. So let's come in here and we'll say Quasar dev to start our Quasar development server, and then we can go ahead and get started. In the meantime, I'm going to jump into index.vue. This is the easiest place to just start playing around. Let me know if everything looks good, if the size of the screen is good and all of that. Otherwise, I can happily change it up. Now, you'll notice that by default, Quasar is actually using the composition API. Actually, you can't even tell here, but I'm pretty sure they do in new components. And this define component thing that we're pulling out of here gives us a little bit of extra type hinting. So notice that when I say setup here, I get a little bit of type hinting there. If you don't use define component, you don't get that. And also without define component, you're going to miss out on some extra goodies in the template. Some extra like type hinting and cool stuff that you get in the template as well. So you want to make sure that you're using that in new components if you're using generators, but by default, I'm pretty sure Quasar is going to give you that anyway. So let's say Quasar new component, and we'll say test, just see how that comes out. Test.view, and there we go. Notice it's automatically using the comp API, but for some reason it's not using that define component, which is a shame. So we should probably let the team know about that. All right, so we're going to say define component there and go ahead and import that. This is very important. Otherwise, things are usually not going to work properly. We want to pull that out of Vue. All right, so that's what you're going to do with a new component. You might want to use something like Hygen in the meantime. Hygen is what I use to generate files, to create generators. what's it called? Hydrogen.io. So this is what I use to basically, whenever I want to create a new component or whatever, it just means that I can custom create the generators myself. And you can use something like plop.js if you prefer, but there's a few options out there. All right, so there's our app up and running. Let's jump into index.view. Let me just make sure I've got my stream information set up so I can see all your comments. Cool. All right, so the first thing we'll do, I think, is just model a variable, because that's usually the first thing that people want to be able to know. And we might just add a Q button here and do the classic increment example. Let's say label is equal to increment. Save that. And let's get into a better screen setup here. I haven't done a live stream in a while, so probably should have spent a little bit more time setting up, but hey, that's all right. All right, so we've got our define component here. We've got our setup. Now let's go ahead and say ref. So this is how we create a reactive variable using ref. So I'm going to yank ref out of there. And we'll say const, let's say count is equal to ref. And this is kind of like saying reference. And we'll say reference to 0 to begin with, right? So this is basically saying that we want to have some reactive state. That's this ref part here. And by default, it's going to equal 0. Now, with the composition API, oh, hello, Sacramentix. Hello to you too. With the composition API, we need to expose whatever we have in this setup method here. I'll show you what I mean. We have to say return object, and I'm going to make some mistakes in my teaching style in this video simply because I am learning how to teach by teaching it to you right now. But anywho, so we're going to then make it available in the template by returning it here. So now I have access to count and I can spit it out there. In fact, let's get rid of the increment label completely. Save that. And there we go. It shows us 0 by default. If I were to change that to a 5, it would show a 5. All right, so now what we can do is add a function as well. And functions are pretty much the exact same way. We can say function increment. And then how about we say count.value. Now, that's one thing I want you to notice. The fact that I had to write dot value there, plus equals 1. Once again, we need to now expose this on the template. Now, I'm going to show you how to make a lot of this simpler later on in the video. So you might be thinking, oh, I know how to make this simpler. Don't worry, that's to come. Okay, so we've created this increment function and we've exposed it on the component, on the template there. So now when we click on this button, going to call increment. So let's save that. And now clicking on this button is going to increment that variable. So this is one thing to note, that whenever you are referring to, whenever you have a reference like this, you have to say count dot value. Okay. And that's due to some basically limitations in JavaScript means that we have to do that. But later on, I'm going to show you how we can simplify this a lot further. And you'll notice also that if I type in count here, dot value automatically is added for me. So that's Vola doing that. At the start of this video, I mentioned Vola, which is a VS Code extension, and it automatically adds dot value so you don't accidentally forget when you're adding it in the template. So now we'll say plus equals 1 again. And if we want a decrement function, let's just go ahead and paste that down. We'll say decrement here, and we'll say minus equals. Need to expose that on the template. And now I can have another button here. We'll call decrement for that button. And let's give it a label equal to decrement. And we'll get rid of that count in there. Save it. And there we go. Now we can decrement it and increment it like so. Very, very cool. Now, one thing I might do, actually, I'll go into my ESLint file. And I always like to, oops, something's going on there. I always like to disable View 3 Essentials and enable View 3 Recommended. View 3 Recommended gives me a little bit of extra linting, actually quite a lot of extra linting. So now if I save this, looks like I might not have it set up properly. Let's try closing this down and then starting it up again to see if that works. This is probably related to prettier stuff. I'm not used to using prettier, and now that I am using it, I don't think my environment is set up properly. Did I enable prettier? Maybe I didn't. That could be half the problem. Yeah, I'm not seeing a prettier RC file. Anyway, usually what you would do is you'd follow the instructions on the Quasar page that show you how to set up linting and all of that. And that means that when you save it, it's going to automatically format things nicely for you. But I won't go into that in this video because no one wants to see me setting up linting. All right, so that's basic use of the composition API. What else can we explore to go a little bit deeper here? Well, I might show you some stuff related to Vola. So let me just lay this out a little bit more nicely. Notice that when I say style here, I actually get some linting in my style tag now. You never used to get that before we had Vola. So if I say color, for example, is equal to red, notice that we get that little bit of extra linting. Oh, it looks like looks like some linting is going on there. Gosh, that's really frustrating. Not seeing a prettier file. Did I enable it when until now? Bugger. Bugger is basically Australian for I screwed up. Damn it. Oh, that's all right. We'll just make do for now. But yeah, notice that we get some extra syntax highlighting there. What else do we get with Vola? I wrote a blog post on this recently, so I should remember. Oh, this is the really cool one here. This is setup sugar. If we tick this, it's automatically going to change it to the script setup mode. So this is very basic using of the composition API. Actually, I might quickly show you some other stuff here. We can say value multiply 2, for example, and use a computed property. So if I come here and say that's equal to computed, and I'm going to have to yank computed out of here, computed, and then we just simply send through a function there. So this is just like using the options API in that computed is just a function, but in this case, we use computed and we send it through a function, and then we expose that on what do you call this? We expose that onto the template like so. And then we're going to come in here and say return count dot value. And notice once again, we get that dot value by default. Thank you, Vola. And now we can say is count times 2. Now that's exposed on the template. And then we can just go ahead and whack that down here. Value multiply 2, save that. Let's refresh the page. Oh, I need to start my server again. So let's say Quasar dev. There we go. Give that a second to run. I mean, I could have sworn I selected prettier when I set this up, but I mustn't have. Otherwise, it would be showing here. Anywho. All right, so give that a second to run. There we go. And now we can see that it's multiplying that number by 2. So that's how you do it. It's really pretty straightforward. And one more thing I want you to note is that we don't have to say dot value here. So since increment is a reference, not increment, sorry, since count is a reference, it automatically unwraps it. And when I say unwrap it, it's basically saying count.value here. So count is count.value. It's doing that by default for us. This is very important to know because later on, when you start adding things to the template, you might still need to say dot value. You know what? Let me just give you an example of that. Let's just say we have a reference to something. So my object const there is equal to a reference and then some value. I don't know if this is actually going to be a good example. Will this work? No, actually, you know what? I've got a better way that I can explain this. For value multiply, how about we do this? We make this an object instead. And we call this calculations. Calculations. And then inside of there, we say value multiply 2. Now look at this. If I say calculations dot value multiply 2, now that shouldn't work, but it is working. It looks like it's unwrapping. There we go. There's some stuff that I obviously don't understand. I would have assumed that I would have had to have said dot value in order for that to work. Let's refresh the page. Anyway, terrible example. There you go. Maybe it still unwraps it because it's visible in the template there. So it might be better if I were to do this. Right, we can learn all of this together. Let's return something here that says result is equal to that. And now what we might do is expose that onto the template. By the way, if I'm making mistakes here and you know what's going on, you know the reason those mistakes are occurring, feel free to let me know. Result. And let's refresh the page. Okay, so we're getting an error there. Looks like that's not working at all, which is exactly what I want to demonstrate this. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that this is being unwrapped behind the scenes if it is a ref. In this case, the reference is to an object. And so in order to access that object, we have to say here calculations. Oh, wait, that's not calculations. It should be value multiply 2. Oh, but that's still going to be unwrapped. So that's probably still going to work. Oh my gosh, terrible example. That's right. That's why I'm doing a stream before I actually teach this stuff. I never used linter. Found it pretty frustrating when you manually make something look as readable as possible and the linter screws everything. Yeah, you need to it's a tough one because I think it's great when you've got larger teams. When I'm doing stuff on my own, I tend to only use the linter. I don't know, to be honest, I like it because I feel like I can develop a bit faster. I can just save the file and it's automatically going to move attributes to new lines, which works really well for me. If you return a simple value, it's not going to be reactive. Yes, that's true as well. Actually, that's a good point. I should demonstrate that. If I were to say const my value here and set that equal to 0, and then expose that onto the template, this is actually not going to be reactive, thanks to that sacramentics. So if I come up here and we say, how about for the increment, we just say my value plus equals 1, and then we display my value there. Let's refresh the page. Notice that that's not going to work. So it's only going to work if we use ref, or you can also use reactive as well, but I'm not going to show that in this video. Kind of goes beyond the scope. This is only going to be reactive if we wrap it in ref like that. And there we go. Now it's going to work. Okay, so that's good to know. You know about computed now. You know about using functions. You know that you have to say dot value in order to access a reference, like in this case here. Let's see what it looks like to actually move all of this functionality into its own file, because that's one of the magical things about the composition API. So I'm going to go to the index page. So we'll go to pages here. Let's create a new file called useindex.js. And now what we can actually do here is we can move a lot of this setup functionality into a function in another file. So I'll show you exactly what that looks like. Let's grab everything inside of here. We'll just cut it like that. We'll split this in two. And I might hide that for more room. Let's say use index.view, that new file we created. We'll say export default here, and we're going to return a function. And I'm just going to paste all of that functionality directly into there, right? Now we're going to need to add some of these imports like ref and computed. So let's go ahead and cut that, and we'll import that at the top here. Import those things from view. Very nice. And now we can import it here. So if I say use index, so we get that imported. What I can actually do now is say, what will I call this? Maybe I can call this index service. I don't know. I can think of a better name for that later on. You can say index service is equal to use index, and we call that function. Now I can return here an object, copy that, and say dot, 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 index service. Okay, so what's happening here? Well, what's happening is we're basically doing all of this setup here in that function, which is being called here, right? And then we're returning all of those values, just like we were before. And then basically we're taking all of these values and using the spread operator, we're returning them onto the template. So now we've moved all of that functionality into another file. And if you want to go hardcore here and have different files, and I know this isn't really bad structuring here because I'm putting it in pages, but just ignore that for now. We can say, for example, if you want to have increment as its own function sitting in its own file over there, or maybe, you know what, let's just call this, how about use, uh, maybe use counter JS, right? We can take all of the counter related stuff, which is pretty much everything. So let's cut all of that and then paste it in there. I'll have to say here, export default, paste it in there, and then we'll return all of that and make it available on template. So we can just paste it in there. I'm basically taking everything out of use index, but I want to show you how easy it is to share code around when using the composition API. We're going to want all of that. So let's import that at the top here. And now what we can do is something like this. We can import, we don't need computed anymore, use counter. And I might even be able to say this, const counter service is equal to use counter, right? So it imports up there. So now we've got this counter service that we've got access to. And then we can start doing stuff like this, counter service dot increment, right? To call that function. Or if we want to access some of the state, we can say counter service dot count to access that state. And then we'll have to say dot value there as well. But another thing we can do is we can basically just proxy all of that in here by saying dot 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 counter service. And now when we say use index, we're going to have access to all of this functionality here. So let me just show you that that works. Come to our index here, refresh the page. I've probably done something wrong. No, I haven't. That's working. So now we can say use index is the place where you have all the functionality for our index.view file. And it's going to be pulling from use counter. Now, in a situation like this, you probably want to get rid of the dot, dot, dot and just say counter service, okay? And then this makes things a little bit more explicit. We can say here, for example, counter service dot decrement. And then over here, we'd say counter service dot value multiply to dot result, right? Which is that kind of convoluted example I was showing you before. So let's just refresh that to see if that's working. Yeah, so there we go. As you can see, if you've got a lot of services, which for larger applications you often do, this is an absolute godsend. This is just wonderful to be able to move around functionality like this. And being able to click through is also wonderful. If I want to see all the use counter stuff, I just control click that, boom, I'm in the file and I can take a look at what's happening in here. Scroll down to the bottom. Okay, now I can see all the stuff that's available to me. And then I might want to, for example, think, oh, okay, what's happening with increment? Control click that, takes me straight to increment. So control clicking around is just wonderful. And refactoring is just wonderful with the composition API. I really love it. All right, I'm going to have a look at the comments here because we've got some stuff that have been said. If I can ask, please explain the correct way of using script setup. Right, I want to get onto that right now. So in fact, let's go. Is it recommended to use script setup? Yes, it actually is now recommended to use script setup. And I can say that with confidence because Evan himself, as of about a week or two ago, has actually said that the recommended approach is using Vola, which I showed you at the start of this video, instead of Viter, and using script setup. So now I'm going to show you the magic of script setup, but you need to know the stuff that I've just shown you so far before understanding script setup because I'll go through the because a little bit later on. So here's the exciting thing. Vola gives us this new script setup checkbox that we can tick here. And that's going to automatically do all the script setup stuff for us. Now, it doesn't do a perfect job. We actually don't need this defined component part anymore. I don't usually need to name my components because I usually give them sensible names so that they can be picked up. But there are situations where you may need to name your component. So it's kind of annoying, but you do kind of need to like throw it in there if you want to name your components. But I'm going to get rid of that for now because it's not necessary. Define component, we no longer need that. And now look at how much simpler our code is. But you probably want to have an idea of what's actually going on here. So here's how it works. Script setup is automatically doing a lot of the code for us. So instead of having to say here, export default, right, setup, and then doing all of our stuff in there, and then returning an object, All of that is now redundant. It's all handled for us. Anything inside of script setup that is used in the template. So for example, if I use indexed service inside the template, it will automatically be exposed on the template. So we don't need to do this return statement anymore. It just works, which is freaking amazing. It's just wonderful. So we don't need any of that code anymore when we're using script setup. And it's also going to unwrap refs for us. So if we have, for example, const my value is equal to a ref of string here, that's going to automatically be available on the template. Let me just comment that out for now. And if I were to say here, my value, save it, refresh the page. Okay, looks like I've got something wrong. We might have to comment that out because it looks like I haven't imported it. No, I have imported it. What's going on here? We done something weird wrong. I'm seeing another comment. I haven't ignored these comments, by the way. I am going to answer them in a moment. Of course, I'm not actually importing ref. So you still need to import ref. So import ref from view. Go, let's save that. Comment that out because otherwise our linter might complain and refresh it. And there we go. So notice that all we have to do here is these lines of code in order to make it available on the template. Now, this is actually simpler than using the options API. This would be much more convoluted with the options API. And one of the big benefits that people often say with the composition API, and I haven't really noticed this until I started building larger applications, is that you can group similar functionality. So if you've got like a really complicated single file component, and sometimes it's really hard to avoid, components get complicated, then you can have, for example, your to-do logic here, but then maybe you're dealing with users as well. This might be a bad example, but I just want to give you, show you a basic example. If you're dealing with comments as well, this can handle all of your to-do related computed properties, data, anything that you need to import related to to-do, that can all sit here. And then all of your stuff with user-related stuff can sit here, and comment-related stuff can sit here. It's just wonderful being able to organize your code this way, especially with larger applications. I promise you, when your applications start to grow, you're going to feel the pinch, and you'll start to notice how wonderful these it is to be able to organize your code in this way. All right, so what else should I'll start going through the questions now. So yes, script setup is the correct way to go now. Is it recommended to use script setup anyway? Yes, it is recommended to use script setup. And I'll go through Ref Sugar later on because it's not currently available in Quasar. That's a very recent thing. And as far as I know, it is actually still in RFC. So I don't want to start recommending people use Ref Sugar until it's out of RFC. In fact, I've noticed that Evan has changed things a little bit with Ref Sugar when I read the RFC recently. Nice. I've always forgot about this syntax. I don't know what that was about because I've gone past it now. It would be nice if you showed how to set up linting at some point, maybe in another video. It's an issue I come across all the time, and I'm not sure how to set it up. Yeah, I agree. Linting is a bit of a nightmare, isn't it? I should do a dedicated video to that because it's one of those things where I go through the web, figure out how to get it working, and then I forget how to get it working because it's just working in my environment. And I've set up everything in VS Code. And so it'd be nice to have like a video and maybe a blog post on that as well. So thanks for bringing that up. I'm gonna make a note of making sure that I cover that. One note is that all your function and variables is only exposed to the current component and not to the parent by default. Yeah, that's a good thing to note. You need to use define expose. Do I? I'm not sure I know about that. Let me know more information about how that works because I don't quite understand what you mean by that. Thanks for explaining script setup. Didn't see this sugar stuff yet. Yeah, sugar. Now, this is one thing to be on top of if you're interested in looking at the latest thing. Don't get too carried away, though, because it still might change. I think Evan's pretty confident in what he's come up with, but that doesn't mean that it won't change. So just be aware of that. All right, what else can I do to sort of another thing worth mentioning here is now that I'm using index service in this way, yeah, this is a good example of where we'll now need to use dot value. So let's bring some of this functionality back in here. I'm going to uncomment that, comment that out, and we'll leave this in here. So for my value, was that the one that was sitting on use counter? What have we got here? We've got count. And we've increment and decrement. Okay, so let's use that. If we want to use that functionality now, we would have to say index service. Okay, so we're pulling it out of here. Index service dot. They're going to give me auto completion. Oh no, it's not. That's annoying. Maybe it'd only give it to me if I'm using TypeScript. Anyway, let's jump back into index service and maybe it's because I haven't actually exposed it here. Index service dot. There we go. Now I can get some nice type hinting here, which is really nice. Dot counter service dot count. Now I'm going to have to say dot value there. I'm pretty sure. So let's just see if that works. And this is increment. And then we'll say index service dot counter service dot count dot value. So you'd probably want to organize your code a little bit nicer in this case. Yeah, there we go. Notice that I had to say dot value in this case. As things get nested and you start importing things from other parts of your application, you are going to lose that automatic unreffing. So the unreffing we get, the fact that we can just reference my value directly, that's because it's directly visible on the single file component. So basically, the compiler is able to unref that for us. But as we start importing things like the index service, we are then going to have to say dot value on our values there. I'm pretty sure that is the case. So if I save that now and refresh, it still seems to be working. Maybe there's some extra functionality there that I don't know about, which is freaking amazing. All right, so maybe we don't have to unref things in that case. that's really cool. But it looks like I can unref it. So if I say dot value there, it's still going to work. Yeah, so it looks like the compiler notices that dot value is that this is a reference and it automatically unwraps it for us, which is insanely cool. Back here. Yeah, so let me know if there's anything else that you want me to go over here. I might actually go, I know what I'll go over. Let's go over some more advanced stuff. I think there's like a use composable, there's like a view composables library thing. Where is it? View composables. There's this really cool library of composables that you can pull in. Here it is here. And it's absolutely amazing, especially if you're dealing with something like Axios. So a lot of you are probably interested in making API requests using the composition API. So let's go over that. And I might sort of hint at some of the stuff I've done for larger scaled applications using one of these composables. Yeah, here we go. So we can use Axios here to TypeScript or not to TypeScript. Yeah. I'm still not all on board with TypeScript, but I'm going to be soon simply because it seems like we're going in that direction. Honestly, TypeScript is a tough one because I can understand the benefit of larger scale applications because there's so much wonderful communication you get between your colleagues. You know, you can be typing something in and know exactly what's available on your objects. If you need to create new objects, you can easily know how to create them because there's templates available. That kind of thing is very wonderful. And it's, gives you a extra layer of protection in your IDE. Some people swear by doc blocks and think that TypeScript is a complete waste of time. I still haven't made up my mind yet. I'm tempted to use TypeScript though, simply because it seems to be the way that the community is going. So even if it isn't for the best, I would still go all in with it simply because I want to be able to communicate with other people in the community. Look, and to an extent, you kind of just need to accept some things in the coding world if you want to be able to communicate, with the community about those things. So I don't know. That's how I feel about it, but I could definitely be swayed another way. All right, so let's dig into this. This is really exciting. These are basically a whole bunch of tools that allow you to access APIs with the composition API. So for example, WebSocket. What we can do here is just like I showed you before, how we had that use to do thing, we can say use WebSocket. And then we can start accessing WebSocket in a really nice way using the composition API. So this basically shows you the entire API available to you with this use WebSocket composition API thing. And there's heaps of them. They've got stuff for the one I'm most excited about is the Axios one, which I'll show in a second. Validation ones, I18N. For those of you that, in fact, Johnny, you might be interested in this. If you want to deal with translation related stuff, I18N composable, that might be something that you're interested in. Anyway, I'm not going to just sit here and go over these because you can go over those in your own time. So let's go ahead and look at how we can use this. A yarn add composition API, Axios. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that in. What else do we need to do? Then we need to actually use it. So that's how we use it here. But the way I like to use it is to actually create an instance of it. So there's another one down here. Here we go, called Make Axios, which allows you to use your own instance of Axios. All right, so I've already done that. And let's basically go ahead and copy paste this code in. I'm just going to like slap all of this around. It's going to be a little bit messy, but we're here to have fun. Here we go. So we got Make Axios. I don't think I need throw exception, so I'm just going to take in the client there. And we get to make our own version of Axios. I thought we could throw our own version in. How does that work? Yeah, here we go. We can make our own client to actually throw in there. So let's come back in here and we'll say import Axios from Axios. This is really exciting stuff. It might look a bit boring to begin with, but now we can say const client is equal to Axios create and then give it a config. So let's create a config here. And I don't need to make this reactive. This is one of the cool things about the composition API as well. This doesn't need to be reactive. So I'm just not going to wrap it in a ref. Simple as that. Wonderful. But you can sort of like keep it all in the same file. Thanks for mentioning I18N and Vue Composables. Yeah, you're welcome. Definitely check that out. It might be the kind of thing that you need to deal with your validation stuff. So I can say here, for example, if you're using TypeScript, you could add some typing here to your Axios object. But I think I can say here like base URL. And I think there's this awesome like typey code API that I can use. Here we go. JSON placeholder. This just gives you like a fake API that you can play around with. So this is a nice to do API. So let's do this and set that as the base for our API, a base URL. And then we could call this, for example, API client. All right, so let's go ahead and save that. I think that's all I need now. Do I just go make Axios there? Let me just do a little bit more digging here. Make Axios. Yeah, there we go. And then I just call that. Yeah, with the client. And then I have access basically to all of this cool functionality. All right, so let's come in here and we'll say make Axios is equal to that. And we can say const API service is probably a good name for that. Cool. So let's just save that. I don't know if all of this is going to work, but if it does, it's going to be absolutely wonderful. I18N next version is heavily based on the composition API. Woohoo. Yep. Super exciting stuff. All right. So now I should be able to expose API service on the template and start using it. In fact, I don't have to write that there. It's already exposed on the template. Oh, there's one more exciting thing I wanted to share with you. This is really cool if you want to import components. So if I come in here, we've got our test component here. That's called my component, something we wrote up before. I can get rid of all of this. We actually don't need a script at all in this example. If I want to use test.view, check this out. When we're using script setup, we just say import test, let's call it test component, from components / test.view. That's all I have to do. I don't have to say components. It's automatically exposed on the template here, and I can just go ahead and use it. Freaking amazing. Now, if I come over there to our application, something's wrong. Classic. Well, client is not defined. Okay, so it's got something to do with what's down here. It's because I called it API client. So let's just paste that in there. We've done something else wrong. Can I repose identify reading counter service? Okay, that's because I got rid of the functionality for that. So let's get rid of that. Press the page again. And there we go. So before, we used to have to do this if we wanted to have a component. We used to have to say components and then put that inside of an object and whack it in there, and people would always forget it. Now, you just import it when you're using script setup, and it's available straight away on the template. If you don't think that is more clean, and if you don't think that is more beautiful, then I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't want to be mean. All right, I'm going to just have a sip of my tea. I'm getting a bit overexcited here. All right, so let's add a button here. Q dash button and start playing around with this Axios thing if I can figure out how to use it. So now we can say at click is equal to, and we can start digging into this Axios service. How about we say, we need to use .execute in order to get it working. Yeah, all right. Let's turn this into a function that says get to-dos. All right, and then I'll come down here and I'll create a function called get to-dos. I love this. Look at this. The code is sitting right up against the side of my editor. That always makes me smile, when you don't have to have things nested anymore. And now API service gives us this execute command. So now I can say API service.exec like that. And what I might actually do is say const exec and yank that out of API service is equal to API service. So we've got a shorthand now. And this is how we actually execute Axios calls using that default API client config that we set up here. I know this might look a little bit complicated if you're kind of new to this all this kind of stuff, but I promise you that once you've got it set up, it's wonderful and it's going to make your code so much easier to manage. When you place all your component code into another use index.view file, are the refs within that singletons? If you imported that use index.view into another component, do they all reflect the same values? This is such a great question. This is a brilliant question. The answer is, if you call it as a function, right? Like we did here, use counter, this is not a singleton. Every time you call that in a different component, you are creating a new version of this state, right? That's very important to know, and I'm glad that you pointed that out. However, it doesn't have to be that way. If you wanted, you could have a new file here called global state.view, and instead of doing the whole export default with a function thing, instead of doing all that crazy stuff, sorry, this shouldn't be .view, that should be .js. Instead of doing that and then returning an object here, what you do is you directly say, for example, const my value is equal to a reference, and we'll pull that in. Oh, VS Code, what are you doing? Nightmare. Import, I'll have to do this manually, ref from view. You do it like that, and then it looks pretty much the exact same. Then you can say export default my value. Now, an empty string there. Now, every single time you import my value, you're referencing the same my value. So this allows you to do global state. When you do it this way, the state is global. When you do it this way, using a function, right? Using a function that returns your values, it means that every time this function is called, that's run again, meaning that you get another version of count, you get another version of increment, right? And that might be what you want. But if you want it to be global, by the way, this is especially good if you're using Quasar's table component and you're using rows and you have your rows in a separate component. Every single row can have its use row.js file. And basically, you can then recreate the state for every single row, which is absolutely wonderful if you've got like fields within that row that you want to update. And you can have all the updating functionality sitting inside this use counter component. If you initiate the value in a function and you use the function value, will be scope per function use. If you initiate, yeah, I think that's basically what I just explained then, but in a more concise way. Thanks for that, Sacramentics. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining me, by the way. I love it having all these peeps in the live stream. All right, so hopefully that made sense with the global state stuff. Now where was I at? I love that we can go on these tangents when we're doing live streams. Okay, so we were doing this execute thing. Honestly, I've forgotten how to use it. So I'm just going to come down here. Because it's so reusable, I forget how to use it because I just basically push all of this code to the side and abstract it to the point where I don't even use it anymore. So execute, and then you pass through the request. So I'm guessing that's going to have all the request information. That's probably going to be an object where we can say, for example, post, or what is it? That's called method is equal to post. Notice that we get this beautiful typing. Since we're wrapping it in execute, we get wonderful typing. And then I think you say, what is it, path? No, you got params there. And, oh man, I can't remember. If anyone remembers what this is with Axios, let's say Axios, just Axios GitHub, I guess. And remember what this is. Oh man, it's at the tip of my tongue. URL maybe? Gosh, this is embarrassing, isn't it? So I want to know, yeah, URL, that's what it is. All right, so let's come back here and we'll say the URL. Remember that we've got the base URL of to type your code. And I think I might need the slash there. I actually can't remember. And then let's just say to-dos and see if that works. I'd be surprised if I got that in the first go. When you're doing API requests, something always goes wrong. Let's take a look. All right, my value is accessed during render. Okay, that's right. We're just doing some demonstration stuff before. Let's give this a try now and see if it works. Ha! It works first go. And there we go. We've only got IDs. I'm surprised that I only get that from the endpoint. But, okay, how cool is that? Get to dos is now sitting inside its own place. Okay, you know what? Let's go to town on this and really turn this into like a large scale application type example, or at least a medium scale application example. It would take me too long to explain that many abstractions. And I might sit everything in the pages directory just to keep things simple for now. So how about we have something here that's called Axios API .js. And I might not be naming things the best way possible, but just bear with me. And we're going to use the word use here. When you see the word use, you can almost think of it as like I'm creating a new instance of this. No, actually, that's not always the case. So that's not necessarily the case. So I won't say that as if it's gospel. But we can say here now, export default a function. Now let's grab some of this functionality out here. No, it's not. I'm in the wrong file. It was in our index one, wasn't it? No, we just put it directly in index.view. Okay, so let's grab all of this stuff here. I might even just grab all of that, copy it, and just get rid of everything for now and just comment that out. So we'll go back to a really basic example, and I can start demonstrating all of this stuff. So we don't have to use async await anymore with Axios. You kind of do. I mean, that doesn't avoid having to use async await, but you can remove it from some situations. I'm going to show you in a second some really cool stuff related to that, where we have access to loading and our errors as well. But I can say here, for example, let's basically try and move a lot of this functionality into its own component so that we can abstract it and make it easier to use in the future. Now what I can do here is return API service. So you can say here ... API service. I'm going to get rid of this get to dos thing. Get rid of that execute thing as well. So now essentially what we've done is we've created a version of API service that's got our base URL configured. So this is where we go to configure how we use our API. Now what we can do is start abstracting out. This is what I like to do. Let's create a new file inside of here called use resource API.js. All right, and now this is going to import use API. What did I call it? Use API service or something. I'm not getting type hinting. That sucks. What default? Maybe it's because I need to do this. And use. There we go. Use Axios API. So now we can say here const API is equal to use Axios API. And we can say, for example, when we use a resource API, I want to know what the resource is. So let's say here, resource, all right? And now what we'll do is we'll say API dot, I won't do it that way. No, hang on, this is gonna come in a second. Now we could say, for example, is function create. So let's just say you wanna create that resource. This is going to stress my brain out a little bit, which is good because that's how your brain grows and you stress it out on a live stream. And then we'll say here, I might just pull execute out of there. So let's say const because we're going to be using that quite a bit is equal to API. Now we can say here, execute And then we know that when it's a create method, it's going to have a method equal to post. And now we can use the resource as the endpoint. So let's say here URL, and that's going to be equal to whatever the resource is. So I think that's about it. And I might just leave out all the async await stuff for now. And then we can come down here, and this is how I like to do it. Now I'll say return, and we're going to return the API. So we still have access to all of the API goodness there, but we're going to add on to that create. So essentially what we've done here is we've got exactly what we had before. We've got access to all of the API goodness stuff that we get from use Axios API, which gives us access to all of the Axios composable library that we imported before. I might be losing you now, but just sort of stay with me so you can see how cool it is, and then you can sort of come back and watch this video if you need to. And so we're basically adding this create method on top of it. We're kind of like abstracting it out. We're adding extra functionality on top of API here. And now check this out. If I got everything right, which I probably didn't, but that's right. Let's import, or I might even be able to say here, use resource API. And then we can pass through there. Oh gosh, that's done something funky. To do. Or is it to-dos? What's the endpoint that they use here? So we'll have to say typey code, and I want to look at the to-dos related stuff. Yeah, it's to-dos plural, which is obvious because that's what it should be. All right, and then you can give it like the ID of it to do. So honestly, create was a bad example. I should probably just use an ID. Anyway, so now we can say const to do resource. Oh, freaking hell, I love this stuff. That's going to be exposed on the template. And now I can come in here and say q-button. And then we can say at click is equal to do resource dot create. But instead of create, I'm going to say index here. All right. And I'll come in here to use resource. Notice how I could control click that. So it's very easy to develop quickly this way. And let's add another one here for index. So this is where you do your CRUD stuff, create, read, update, delete. And we'll say get onto that resource. All right. And then we'll expose get here. Sorry, we'll expose index here. And I think that's all I have to do to get this to work. Refresh the page, open up our network tab. Let's whack that and see if it works. Oh my freaking goodness, it actually worked first go. How unbelievably cool is that? This is the API that we end up with. A to-do resource that we can basically do whatever the hell we want with. But it gets even better, right? I've only abstracted it one step further. We can go one step further than that even. When you start implementing modeling, and I use Vuex ORM for this, which basically allows me to have an ORM map for all of my models, but I won't do it in this video. At John Martini, I'm placing these meaning all use.js files in a composables folder. Yeah, I used to use a composables folder. One thing I've started doing also recently is having a services folder, right? Let me delete that. It's a bad name. It was meant to be a folder. Services. So really, all of this stuff for me would be sitting inside of a services folder because I like to think of it as services. Like this is a service that helps me access an API resource. This is a service that helps me access my models. This is a service that helps me access whatever. I like to sort of think of it as that way. And then I would call this, for example, ultimately, when I've abstracted this further, const to do service. And my to do service, it's going to be able to not only hit the back end and get my to-dos, but also commit it to state. So then I could say to do service dot create. And what that's going to do is hit the back end, get the to-dos, and not create, sorry, index, and then also put them into state. So you end up with this phenomenal, beautiful API that is really, really easy to use. And in fact, I'm going to show you that right now because we're on a roll, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so we've got a to-do resource. I can't believe I'm showing all my secrets all in this one live stream. This will end up on Quasarcast in a much cleaner way, but let's just leave it at this for now. So how about we grab all of this? And I might be able to put that into our store, into our services folder without any problems. No, it didn't ask me to update anything. Yeah, I've really got to get my VS Code environment working properly. So what I'll do also is I'll go into quasar.conf and go to my aliases. Okay, I want to do this. Let's do this properly. We want to have aliases for our services just so it's easier to do. I always just steal this code from the Quasar site. And here's the alias related stuff. So under build, we basically just want to grab that. So let's search for build. There it is there. And I'm such a cheat. This is all I do. Now we'll call this services. And the directory for that is source services. Save that. And now we've got a brand spanking new alias for our services. Oh, have I done something wrong? We don't need access to those. We can get rid of that. /source services on here. Let's close that out and restart it again. All right, so let's just take a quick moment to see if I can figure this out. Oh, okay, I need to import path, otherwise it's not going to work. Here it is here. Didn't read the example. Bad Luke. Hit myself on the wrist. Save that, and let's see if that's going to work for us. It's starting to work now. And then I might have to go into my TS config and then add that alias in here as well. So let's grab that. And it's basically going to be services / whatever takes me to, and I'm going to steal that code. I'm such a code stealer. Services. There we go. And now, was that linting all right? Have I done something wrong? What are we complaining about? Doesn't matter. Let's restart Vita now. Not Vita, we're using Vola now. Gosh, went on a bit of a tangent there. Yeah, okay, so of course that's not going to work. But now we can import that a lot more nicely by basically saying use resource API is under services / use resource API. Get that right? Save it. And there we go, it worked. Tremendous. All right, so cool, we got this folder now. Let me just quickly run over what we've done. We created use Axios API. Its job is only to give us access to Axios's, to an API using Axios. In this case, it's the type your code fake API, but that would be your API in real life. In fact, in real life, you probably have something like process.env.api_URL inside of here so that you can access that depending on your environment setup. Then we say use resource API, which extends that. And this is where we can basically start hitting endpoints like create, index, update, delete, all that kind of good stuff. Now, the next one that I'm going to add is use model API? Yeah, let's call it use model API.js. Okay, so use model API. Once again, we're going to say export default. And 3 guesses what this is going to inherit from. What did I call it again? I can't even make my own guess. Use resource API. All right. And then this is going to take in the name of the entity name of the model. All right. Now we'll say const use resource. What do we call this? Resource API. Let's call it that is equal to use resource API. And then how about we say, usually this would be a Vuex ORM model for me. And that Vuex ORM model has got an entity string on it, which matches up with my API. So I'd usually do something like this. I'd call that something like model or class or something. No, I can't use class. So something like that with a capital M, so I know that it is a class. And then it'd be something like model.entity if you're using Vuex ORM. And I'd pass that through because that's always going to be my resource endpoint. But anyway, let's just say entity for now. And we'll figure this out as we go along. Now we can do a return here. So cool to be able to share this stuff that I've been like geeking out on and trying to figure out over the past like few months and finally be able to share it with you. You can use the chain webpack syntax. Yeah, I should start using that. Apparently it is a lot nicer. Chain webpack. Yeah, okay. I'll take a look at that and maybe use that next time because I think chain webpack does look a lot nicer than normal Webpack. Thanks for this, Luke. Late for Australian Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully catch you earlier next time. Yeah, no worries. It is. I'm in Australian Eastern Standard Time. Geez, I should check the time. What time is it? Yeah, right. I need to wrap up soon. So let's see if we can blast through this in time. All right, so now use resource API. I'm going to add ... to that because basically we want to inherit all the functionality from resource API. This is going to take advantage of state as well. So you would usually have some sort of a state mechanism, but we need a way of pulling out of our state. So maybe I will use Vuex ORM in this example. Yep, screw it. Let's do this properly. Vuex ORM. And I'm going to go through the whole setup for this. I never remember the details of setting all this up. Just turn the heater off. It's bloody hot in here. Oh, I might have to take my... One sec. I need to take my pajama shirt off. It's very warm. Whew. Okay, live streaming without a shirt on. You're not going to see my face, that's for sure. All right, we want to get Vuex. So first we need to define our models. So let's copy that. I'm going to go back into quasar.conf. I'm going to move a bit faster now. So sorry if it can be it's going to be difficult to keep up. We're going to add another one in here, and this is going to be for my models, and we'll call that models. And then we'll come in here and we'll create a new folder, which is called models.js. And let's create a new model in there, which is going to be called, no, we'll rename that. Where's rename? I think it's F2. Let's just do that. Models. And that's going to have a file in it called todo.js. Let's just whack in what we get by default here. Copy that, open our editor, paste it in, and this is going to be to do. And this is the key here. I always make sure that matches up with my API. Or if you really need to, you have something in here like resource, which is equal to your API resource if you want to have that different to your entity name. But I try to make them match up. It's a good practice. So then I have here to-dos. And then for the fields, let's have a look at what we get for the fields. Run that script. That's what we get from a to-do endpoint. Is that right? Yep. So now I'm going to come in here and basically mimic everything I've got. We get in that endpoint. Get rid of, oh, that just fixed it up for me. So title is going to be this.adder, which will be null by default. I just set them all to attributes with null by default. I probably shouldn't. Maybe at some point down the line, I'll stop doing that. But for now, that's what I do. I think you get better TypeScript support if you say like this.number or whatever. Anywho, we've got our to-do there. And I'm going to say here, export default class to-do. And now we'll be able to import that all over the place. Next thing we want to do is actually use that. I don't need that anymore. I don't need that anymore. And I don't need that anymore. Entity name, I know about that. I know about fields. We've already done all of that. Now, the next thing I want to know is how we actually do the setup. Oh, we need to do the installation as well. So let's say yarn add just view because everything else we should have already. So we'll do that here. Oops, yarn add Vuex-ORM. Is that correct? No, it's at Vuex-ORM core. That's actually what we want. Go pull that in. What else do I want to do? Where's the database registration stuff? Oh, I'm seeing Sacramentics is saying F2 now. I wish there wasn't such a delay so I could catch this stuff earlier. Defining models, there should be something about database registration. Okay, here that is here. So we want to jump into our store. So let's say, I think it's under, oh, there we go, it's right there. Let's just click on it. Under there, I'm going to just copy everything there and just start culling stuff that I don't need. We've already got Vue. We've already got Vuex. That's all done for me. Vuex ORM, that's what I need. Instead of user, I'm actually pulling this out of models / to do. And then we want to do our database registration. So let's go ahead and create our database. Don't need that. And then we can say here database dot register, and I'm pretty sure you just whack it in there directly. Yes, you do. To do. This basically puts that into the store. And then we want to actually use our database down here. I don't need modules. don't use modules. I just use Vuex ORM for everything. So I should be able to come down here and just whack it in there like that. We can get rid of that. We can get rid of that. There we go. We have to add a comma there, save it. Hopefully I've done everything right there. Usually I haven't. Usually there's one or two things that I've messed up. Refresh the page, see if it's all working. Looks like it is. If I go to view and I go to Vuex, we've got our state sitting in there. So Vuex ORM seems to be set up. Yeah, I've been getting some weird issues recently with dev tools, but that's all right. It's kind of a transition point at the moment where they're trying to move over to Vue 3. All right, so I've got Vuex ORM set up. So that means I'm ready to start inserting data, and we can basically bring ourselves back to this use model API point here. And that entity, we can now say that that's going to be a Vuex ORM model. So let's come in here and call that model instead. And then I'm going to come here and say const entity is equal to model dot entity, like so. I hate having these friggin' stuff in my linter. Doesn't matter. It's not important enough. Okay, so we've got entity there, which is going to align with to-dos entity, okay, which in this case is to-dos. And like I said before, entity, we want to always match up with the resource API's URL there. So now what we can do is basically say, we're going to delegate the create request to resource API. And when it's done, we're going to take the response and insert some models into the store. All right, I'm used to using promises. I've only just started using async await, but let's see if it works. So we'll say function create here. And then we can come in here and say, oh, by the way, when I get to this point, sometimes I like to get rid of the ... and namespace resource API so that I do have access to the create method on resource API. But honestly, it's probably not necessary. Let's add the ... there. And then we can add our create method in there, and let's actually do it now. We're going to say resource API dot create. No, we don't want create here. Let's just do index. It's going to be a better example. It's easier to sort of implement with a fake API. Dot index. And now the next thing I'm probably going to have to do, let me see if I can remember how to do this properly with async await. Async that, await that, and then we can return API dot promise dot value. So this is something I want you to note here is that basically we get promise inside of that Axios composable. It gives us access. We pull the promise out of the composable. It's a very new way to do things, but there's a lot of benefits to this that don't really reveal themselves until you dig a little bit deeper into using the Axios composition API composable. So this is one of those things that's going to look a little bit weird to play around with to begin with, but especially when you start adding try catches for errors, you'll notice that this is actually a really nice way to develop rather than straight out returning your await. All right, so that's going to be awaited. And because of that, I can now say here await, and then I can say here, I know that that's done. So I can say model, which in this case is going to be able to do dot create. So now I'm calling create. This is Vuex ORM's create, or you might even want to say insert in this case, create or insert, whatever. And then I'm going to pass that some data. Let's see if I get this right the first time. Resource API, we get some very nice auto completion here. Dot data. So this is what we're pulling out of that Axios composable dot value. You don't want to forget the dot value. It can be very easy to forget the dot value because a lot of the stuff is wrapped in a ref in order for it to be reactive. I think that might actually work. Oh, we need to add async here. And we'll change that to index. And now let's go all the way back to our index.view here. And don't worry, I'm going to run over everything that I've done here in a moment. And instead of use resource API, we're going to import, what was it called? Use model API. And we're going to pass through there the to-do. And let's say const to-do service is what I'll call that. Or how about to-do model service, because later on down the line, I'll end up doing a to-do service, which handles everything to-do related. And I mean like fetching the data once it's actually been fetched from the API and stored, being able to like manipulate the data, being able to do filtering on the data. That's what my to-do service will be, which is why I've said to-do model. So in fact, it should be to-do model API service. And then the final thing I'll end up with is to-do service. So hopefully that made sense, that's why I'm adding all that extra namespace in here inside of that variable name. All right, so now we've got this to-do model API service available to us. And how about we say const index is equal to do model API service dot index. That's just going to make it easy to call in our template. And we don't need that anymore. And I think that's everything, but it's squawking at me. I'm not surprised I got something wrong. If anybody caught something, do let me know. I've probably done something in here. Oh, okay, there's no to-do resource. We're just calling index directly there now. Let's fix that up. No errors in the console. Refresh. If I got this all right in one go, then I swear to you, this is just luck. I don't want you to think that this is a common thing, but I probably didn't. So let's have a look here. All right, so it's hit to-dos. It's gone ahead and grabbed all of those to-dos. If I go to view now, have we got it in the store? No. So that part has not worked. And it's saying here cannot convert undefined or null to an object. All right, that's all right. Now we can jump into our index here to see what the actual problem is. So we'll go into use model API index. So something is going wrong here. So it looks like resource API.data.value is equal to nothing. So we might have ended up with a problem there. Maybe it's not awaiting properly for some reason. Let's go to our index here. Await, and then we return API.promise.value. So we return the promise. Maybe what I actually want to do is just straight out return the await. Can I do that? I don't know that's the right way to do it though. That's all right. We're just experimenting for now. No? Okay, so let's start doing console.logs all over the joint. I'm going to bring it back to what we had before. Index. Oh, so you have to do that with the view file, not JS file. Script setup is for view SFC. Okay, I'll let you guys chat amongst yourselves for now so I can try and get this bad boy done. So when that's done, I want to check what my data is on here. So let's just do a console.log of that and see if we're actually getting anything in return. I might actually be using Vuex ORM wrong. Maybe with create, you just pass it directly. No, I'm getting null there. Resource API data dot value, but the network request is returning data. So that's definitely working. So what I might do is return resource API so we can just start digging into that. All right. So we've got here data, and it looks like the value of that gives us a proxy. Okay, so that is giving us something. I must be doing something weird here then. So resource API data dot value should give me that proxy, which then gives me the data. Right, so how about we go sort of one step at a time here, and we say dot data there. Maybe it's not actually reactive. It would make sense that it's not reactive, wouldn't it? No, it's saying it's a computed ref, so it would have to be. Dot value, that's giving me the proxy. Value. So maybe this await isn't working correctly. That could also be the problem. Yeah, that's got to be the problem. For some reason, this async await is not actually awaiting the way that it should. Oh, okay, that's the problem. If I go to index here, I did all of that functionality in the wrong spot. Oh gosh, I'm such a ninny face. All right, so await that. Oh my gosh. It's all right, we all make mistakes. You have to make mistakes if you're a coder. If you don't make mistakes as a coder, then I don't know your magic or something. Okay, it worked. We got the data. Oh, check the store. And the data's in the store. Okay, so check this out. All right. Oh, this is where you want to pay attention. If you've just been sitting back, relaxing and watching, this is the cool stuff here, right? If I go to index.view, this is the API that I end up with, okay? All I have to do is say use model API, and eventually you could call this to-dos if you want to simplify that or whatever. And then I can basically yank index out of there. Actually, let's do this differently. Let's say index, let's simplify this even further, is equal to use model API. Okay, so this is not only fetching our data from the back end, it's also inserting our data into the store for us based on the fact that we've passed through the to-do there. But it gets even better. The cool thing about this setup is if you ever want to access your API more direct, oh, excuse me, I'm burping to myself. If you ever want to access the API more directly, then you simply say use Axios API. Or if you want to use it, if you want to just access a resource directly without changing the store, you say use resource API. If you want to access Axios more directly and use it raw, then you can say use Axios. The cool thing about this is by coding in this way, we can tap in to any way of hitting our backend that we like. We're basically abstracting things in a very, very nice way and pulling apart our concerns in a really nice way. So I'm actually going to go one step further here because I can't help it. I just want to show you sort of the full circle of all of this. If I come here into, you can tell my brain's getting a little bit tired, but let's push on. Let's add another surface here, which is going to be use model, right? To me, this is kind of the final point. This is what I end up using the most in the end. And then we say export default. And then we want to use here, oh, I always forget to turn that into a function. We want to say use model API, right? So we're abstracting one step further out here. Use model API is using use resource API, which is using use Axios API, which is using the use Axios composable. Notice how we've made things really beautifully abstracted out. So now we can say here const model API is equal to use model API, and we'll pull in here the model, all right? So that's going to work. We've now got access to use model API. Now we'll return here all the functionality for use model API. But this library is also going to give us access to the model. And often I would break that out into its own library as well. But for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to in this video. So what I can do here is say, for example, what do we call it? How about entities? Const entities is equal to a computed property. Oh, it's using the ref sugar thing. Oh, that would be a vola thing. Right, I can't really complain about that. Import it myself. Now we can have a computed property here. And then that is going to return all of our entities. And we can do that by saying model dot all to get all of our entities. And if you wanted, you could start doing filtering on top of this. And in fact, you know what? Let's do this. Let's make this model accessible. And you could do something like this. Const model collection, or how about we just say const collection is equal to computed, right? This is going to be so freaking cool. And then what we'll also have here is const model query. I don't know if this is actually going to be a good thing to do right now. I'm just kind of experimenting. And then we can expose that. No, you know what? Screw that. I'll save that for another day. That's a little bit more advanced. It's going to take me a while to sort of nut all that out. I've just realized. But we can go ahead and grab all of our entities now. If you want to have loading state in its own variable, by the way, the Axios library gives us loading state. So we can say const loading is equal to model API dot, in fact, let's just yank it directly out of here. How about this? Const is equal to model API. And then we can decide on the stuff that we want to expose here. So we could say loading, and then we can just expose loading directly like this. So that means that when we're getting our entities, we can have a loading spinner, and when it's done, we have direct access to all of those entities. You are not an adept of the one-line syntax. um, so that's fetching the entities. And then you can imagine on here as well, you'd also have, for example, const create or whatever. And another thing that I like to do is have a way to find a single entity. And then I'll often break out use model and then use model collection. And then use model collection will be dealing with lots of models. And then use model will be dealing with single models. So if you want to do a batch create, you'd use model collection. If you want to do a single create or a single update or something like that, you would simply use model. Const entity. Yeah, I don't. This is a personal thing. I don't really like one-liners like that. I get a bit of hate from this at work because a lot of people like doing like these one-liners. I don't know. I don't like it, and I know they use it in the documentation as well. But I just always find myself, to me, for some reason, this is just more readable to me. But of course, you could then just do something like this, something like that, if you would prefer. I don't know. Maybe that is cleaner in this example. All right, we'll leave it like that for now. But all right, let's go ahead and use this now. And hopefully you're starting to see how wonderful this can be. So we've extracted it one step further. Instead of use model API, we've now got use model. All right, let's get rid of that. And now we can pull out of that index and let's pull out of it loading as well. I mean, come on, how freaking amazing is this? How beautiful is that? Everything we need just being pulled directly out of there. And then since we're using Quasar, we can simply say loading is equal to loading. Doesn't get any cleaner than that. And then when we click on this, we're going to index those models. Let's see if that actually works for us. There we go. We get the loading spinner and then it's done. So let's go ahead and actually spit out the results of that. And this is going to be the fun part. What is going on here? I want to get in on this conversation. Const entities equal. I'm a fantastic of this. I put it everywhere. Yeah. Some maybe I'm the only one. I guess I'm the odd one out. That's fine. I'm cool with that. So this is a to-do list. So how about we say Q dash list and then Q dash item and then Q dash item dash section. And if I go to my post, my to-do, I can actually see what I've got here. User ID. We've got the ID, the title and completed is probably what we'll actually use there. So now I can have a section here, which is a Q dash checkbox. And then I can say model dash value is equal to do dot completed. All right. And then here we'll say V dash 4 is equal to do in, and this is where we get to do the fun part of yanking out those entities. Entities, there it is. In entities, maybe I could call that something different. How about this? Let's call that use. Wait, have I got that the wrong way around? Oh, I always get confused when I'm doing it in reverse. I think that is correct. Yeah, you can tell because it's no longer grayed out. That is correct. And then we're going to need a key here. So the key will be equal to do.id. Oh man, I'm really slowing down. You can feel my brain dying. Oh man, I hate this format. It's disgusting. Q-item-section, and then we'll put in here the to-do title. So let's just whack it in there directly. And then we also want this to be a side item, so we'll add side. And this is ruining my syntax highlighting, but not highlighting, sorry. It's ruining my syntax, but not a big deal. All right, so let's go ahead and fetch those to-dos. Bam. That is a lot of to-dos. How cool is that? Look at the final API that we end up with this beautiful, beautiful to-do example. The final API is you literally just yank out the functionality you need. We have the loader and it's working. We have access to all of the entities. We can index it. If you wanted, you would then go ahead and add create, you'd add update, you'd add delete. And by the way, just to go full swing with this, a website that I've created recently is actually the Quasar-News website. So if you want to have a quick look under the hood of what I'm doing there, Let's just have a quick squiz at that. So I'll get out of this. I'll cd into quasar-news, open that in code. Ooh. Oh man, now I'm going to embarrass myself because some of the code in this has not been cleaned up yet. But the point I want to point out here, if I zoom in a bit here, if I come here to source, notice that I've got my services here. And I've done, oh, this is a good thing to point out. I've done something similar with authentication. And the cool thing about this is I'm using Laravel Sanctum behind the scenes. I could share all of these composables, which I will do soon. I say soon, which means I don't have a plan to do it yet. I've got other things at the top of my priority list. But I can easily share this library, and then you, as a consumer of this library, will easily be able to create authentication for Laravel Sanctum. You just pull in use login. You just pull in that composable and use it. So actually let me show you that. Where's my login form? My code in this isn't too embarrassing. Login form, let's zoom out a little bit here. Here we go. So we've got our login there, and it's just using the login service. You could then consume my Laravel Sanctum library and just use that login service and say .login, and it would work. Obviously, you'd have to do a little bit of configuration, and it would just work. What city are you in? I'm in Stockton in Eastern Australia and New South Wales. So I live in a little island place. Let me show you where I live on Google Maps for those of you that are interested. I'm not going to show you my exact address. In fact, I should probably do this in an incognito so that it doesn't mark where I am. This gives you a basic example. Did that work? Yeah. Here we go. So I live in Stockton, in this place here, and I catch a ferry to work. Well, before COVID, I have to work from home now, but I catch a ferry from here over to here, and then I work somewhere around here in Stockton. That's my hometown. No, that's all right. I like being distracted to talk about life stuff. And if you're a little bit more interested in the sort of scoped out view of that, this is Sydney. A lot of people probably know about that. And I live over here in Newcastle, about 2 hours train ride to Sydney. And there I am in the context of the world. All right. So what was I talking about? Yeah, I was just showing you some of this cool stuff here. And just to give you an idea of what that looks like. So here's my use login composable. Notice that it is also using other composables like the CSRF token and fetching the user. I can basically say, hey, give me the functionality to do that. And then later on, I then actually use it. And it's just such a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful way to code. It means that I can very easily encapsulate all of my logic in different files. Yeah, so there you go. What else can I show you here, which is really exciting? Yeah, I treat day.js as a service. Later on, I might turn that into a composable, but for now, I just set some settings that I'm going to use on it, and then I export it there. This is way better than moment.js because it means that you can just pull in the plugins you need, and you end up with a much, much, much smaller file at the end of the day. So I love day.js. And yeah, let's go from the bottom up of what I'm actually doing here. Oh, here's another example. Use polymorphic updater. I've got a composable especially designed for updating polymorphic relationships, and that sits in its own composable. It was a bit of a nightmare to write, but now that it's done, all I have to do is use it. And it's super, super easy to use. I just consume it like this, and I can start using that in all of my projects now really easily. I could just put it in its own library or copy paste that code, and all that functionality is just going to work wonderfully. All right, back to what I was saying originally. So I've got use API here. One thing I'd like to change is in use API, I'd like to be able to set the base or some sort of configuration, or use provide and inject to add configuration. I'm not sure exactly how I would do that, which makes it more globally usable. Because at the moment, I'm hard coding that using my environment variable. But of course, if I wanted to share this around, you wouldn't want to do this. You'd want to be able to basically pass that through so that everybody could use this in a more simple way. In fact, you'd probably do something like this. You'd say const maybe base URL is equal to, or maybe the entire config. The entire Axios config could be a reference. I don't know. Base URL is equal to a ref. And then basically you would expose that, and then the user could set the base URL themselves when they consume the use API composable, which would be really cool. Oh no, what have I done? I saved it, done something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's probably something to do with, it's because I changed my linter recently. Bugger. Yeah, all right, so let's see if I can find the starting point here. There's use API. Yeah, so this is the starting point. And honestly, I want to abstract this even further, which I probably will at some point. I've got make Axios here. So this is kind of like the bare bones using the Axios composable. And I'd use all of that to create my use API, right? And then use API is then extended by use resource API, right? This is how I actually hit my resource endpoints. And this has some cool extra functionality where I've got loading state. And this means that I get more information about the loading state. So rather than just having loading, I've got here whether it's updating, whether it's updated, or whether the latest thing that I did was an update. So I've got that extra information about the loading state, which is really handy to have. So by putting that into Resource API, I can now do much better loading feedback to my users. Just wonderful. Now, use Resource API is consumed by use model collection. No, not use model collection, use model API, right? And it's not only used by use model API, but it's also used by use model relation API. So when I'm hitting related endpoints, for example, slash user slash comment, for example, slash user slash comments, because sometimes with APIs you've got more complex endpoints like that, and you might want to do stuff like syncing when you've got many-to-many relationships, where you'd have to say, for example, slash user slash comments slash sync, right? Basically, yeah, I've now got use model relation API, which takes care of all of that stuff, right? All of the functionality once. I'm sure it's a little bit of code to begin with, but eventually when it's done, you then expose it. And you can see I've started thinking about how I'll implement sync there, but I haven't done it yet. But that's one thing that I want to do at some point down the line to simplify things further. And yes, it's interesting to know that use model relation API, that's extending from, where is it? My resource API. Yeah, use resource API. Use model API, relation API extends use resource API. Use model API also extends from use resource API. Pretty cool stuff. And then once everything has been fetched and put into the store with use model API, right? Because this is when we actually start putting stuff into the store. Notice that I've got model delete there. I'm actually accessing the store and I'm starting to mess around with the store. When that's done, I can then use model collection. So I've separated these two concerns here. And use model collection is concerned with filtering the data, displaying the data in a collection of comments, for example, adding queries to the data. All of that fancy stuff sits within its own composable. I more prefer to put the statuses from use resource API, like updated in my translation files. Oh, that would actually make a lot more sense. I haven't done anything with translation, which is probably why I've never thought of that. But if they sat in a translation file, it would mean that you could, translate it. So if I wanted to say, for example, updating, well, I guess what you could do is you could still use it this way. So let's riff on that idea. Yeah. So what you could do then is you could use this. This is my mapping. So I basically know behind the scenes what I call it, like creating. But then you could say, for example, you could have a translations file as well. You could have like a request status translations or something like that. And then it basically hinges off of these. So on the front end, I could easily know if it's created or creating, because that needs to be hard coded for me so that I know behind the scenes, within my code, whether it's creating. If that were translated, my code would be wrong. But then I could have translations for when I'm actually telling the user that I'm creating that thing. And this could be like a computed property, or there's probably other stuff you do with I18N to do all of that properly and blah, 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 that I don't understand because I haven't experimented with I18N yet. But yeah, that's a really cool concept that would then be possible. Oh, crap, I saved it again. Such a habit. Yeah, so I don't know if there's much else that I can go over. I need to go to bed soon. Um, that's pretty much it for this video. Man, I've had a blast. Thank you so much, everybody, for sticking around. This really has been fun. If you want to ask me any questions that I can cover in the next live stream, let me know if there's any stuff in particular that you're interested in learning about, so I can record that now, and in the next live stream, I can kind of dig into it. Maybe we'll actually build something more solid in the next live stream, because I definitely like to, do stuff like that in live streams. It's often fun to sort of get in the flow of things, and then it's cool because you guys get to give me feedback and say, "Oh, such and such is a bad idea. Don't do that." Oh, actually, I need to, or like, let me know ways I can improve my code. Let me just mention this, quasar-news.com. This is a new project. You guys are actually the first people to know about it, that I've been working on lately. And it's my first go at creating an SSR app. I've never had to deal with SSR or SEO. So this is the first time I've built an SSR application. Ironically, I haven't actually done the SEO part of it yet. But yeah, this is where I've been writing articles. I've written 2 articles now, and I want to open it up to the public so you can register here and start writing your own articles. I'm still having some issues with like that image loading. For some reason, sometimes I have to refresh the page. But yeah, I've tried to make it like really easy to read as a web developer. I've put a little bit of personality into my articles so they're nice and fun. And yeah, check out quasarnews.com. We're also going to have a podcast coming out soon. So I noticed we've got Quasar News coming soon. And it just means I can talk about stuff. So the next one, I'll probably talk about like the composition API script setup. I'll talk about videos in the community. If Danny does any videos that are really cool, are you using Firebase or Laravel? If Danny's doing videos that are really cool, I can sort of like dig into that and let you guys know what's going on there as well. So we can sort of like cross share what we're doing. That would be really cool. And yeah, definitely sign up for the newsletter as well if you'd rather read the news. So we've got the newsletter where you can read the news. We've got the podcast where you can listen to the news. And all of this stuff is going to be freely available. Of course, we're not going to charge for this like news stuff. I just want to keep you guys updated. And then there's a lot of links here that a lot of people might not actually know about for staying connected with the Quasar community. Now, I got this message. Are you using Firebase or Laravel? Laravel. I always use Laravel. I'm not a big fan of Firebase and Superbase. I shouldn't say that. I mean, man, I've talked about this in previous streams, and I could talk about it a lot. The reason I like to use frameworks like Laravel, Laravel's the one I choose. I think it's the best. I'm biased. You might like Ruby or Django or whatever the other ones are out there. I like to use Laravel over something like Firebase because I have total control. The problem with something like Firebase is you hit brick walls sooner. You can build things faster, but the cost of that is you're more likely to end up narrowing what you can do in the long run. So sure, most things do end up being possible with Firebase, but it gets harder to do more complex things as you get deeper into your project. Like there are some amazing, amazing things you can do with SQL that you can't do with Firebase, at least not well or efficiently. And I've heard from a lot of people that they end up hitting those brick walls. And so that this is one of the reasons that I'm starting to build these composables and I'm trying to make life easier for people that are using Laravel and Sanctum and these backend frameworks, so that they can start ditching stuff like Firebase. Superbase would be actually really cool. I'm interested in that. Because if you're using those frameworks like Firebase, even though they're easier, you do end up getting sort of locked into their way of doing things, and it's kind of harder to pivot, and it's harder to pull apart your logic when you're using something like Firebase. At least in my experience. Please do let me know if you think that I'm wrong. I'm open to being corrected on things all the time, but that's at least my take on it. So the reason I use Laravel in particular, live updates with Superbase, folks. Yeah. Definitely do check out Superbase as well. I'm hearing a lot of great things about it. So that's definitely something worth digging into. But yeah, the thing I love about Laravel is that, especially once you do dig into it and you take the time to learn it, you have got basically this massive ecosystem that allows you to do anything. You're limitless with something like Laravel or something like Django or something like Ruby. Um, and like I've mentioned before, you don't end up hitting those brick walls. And let me just quickly run over why I like Laravel in particular. And basically, the reason lies right here in the ecosystem around Laravel. Laravel has got, um, in fact, let me go through some of these. If you want to go serverless with Laravel, you've got Laravel Vapor, which is freaking amazing. It allows you to scale your application to the nth degree using serverless with a PHP application. And so scaling large applications is no longer a problem with Laravel or PHP, which it used to be in some cases, especially if you were kind of new to managing servers, doing advanced kind of server management stuff. They've also got Laravel Octane now, which is giving insane speeds um, in request time. It's like 20 times faster, I think, or like at least 10 to 15 times faster than it used to be, thanks to Laravel Octane. Laravel Forge for managing stuff, so you don't have to do any of that um, management when you're hosting your server on the web, but you've got your own web server that you can hook into and change however you like if you're a power user. So I love Laravel Forge for that. It means that I can easily basically push my applications. Um, Laravel Envoy, zero downtime. So this is kind of like Laravel Forge, except you can basically very easily ensure that you get zero downtime. I've never had the need for something like that. Horizon means you can manage jobs in the background. One of the things I love about Laravel is handling jobs, which is a complete nightmare, is wonderful when you're using Horizon. It gives you this beautiful interface to let you know about failed jobs and stuff like that. Laravel Nova gives you a dashboard for free. Laravel Sail gives you a Docker environment for Laravel that's just works out of the box. Laravel Echo allows you to do real-time stuff with Laravel so that you can easily push events to the front end. Lumen is a micro framework version of Laravel I never really used. Spark, this is extremely exciting. Laravel Spark allows you to accept payments with a subscription model with virtually no work. It is absolutely mind-boggling. And Cashier, if you want to dig in and do it a little bit more manually. So I'm super excited about Spark. And when I open up my subscription version of Quasarcast, all I'm going to have to do is start using Spark and it'll just work with virtually no work on my end. And I'll have a subscription site that you guys can subscribe to when I start charging money down the line. And, stuff like a purchase power parity is available in Spark. So I'll be able to charge less for people that are in places around the world that might not be able to afford it as easily using, the McDonald's model, where McDonald's have basically, they've already figured out the price of a burger um, or a meal that people can pay in different countries, and using that as a model, you can basically figure out how to price your product. So I'll be able to do that using Laravel Spark. Laravel Mix I don't actually use, but it's called compiling stuff if you want. Laravel Valet allows you to easily set up a server environment so you can do stuff like this, mysite.com, and it's going to have an SSL certificate set up, or mysite.dev, or not dev because you can't use that anymore, dot working projects, for example. You can easily set that up using Laravel Valet. It'll automatically do that for you depending on your folder structure, which is just amazing. Right, so you don't have to handle all that Nginx stuff in order to get this really nice sort of format for your new websites. Laravel Dusk allows you to do browser end-to-end testing with Laravel. Laravel Sanctum allows you to do authentication with Laravel using an SPA application, because normal authentication with Laravel doesn't do it in an SPA way, but Sanctum was released so that you can do it in an SPA way. And that's actually how I'm doing it for the Quasar news website. Laravel Scout allows you to do full text search using stuff like, what's it called? Algolia or Melee Search as well. So you can easily set up Melee Search and it'll just work out of the box. Laravel Forge supports Melee Search, so it'll spin up a server for you with Melee Search set up so you can easily start searching your models using Laravel Scout. It really is freaking amazing. Laravel Jetstream is going to scaffold an entire authentication system for you. So your login, your registration, your resetting of passwords, being able to log in and log out devices with an interface, being able to have two-factor authentication that you can use your phone with, or having QR codes that you can use on your screen, all that kind of stuff is set up for you with no extra work using Laravel Jetstream. It is mind-boggling. Laravel Telescope allows you to get an interface that gives you access to everything in your application for like debugging purposes. So you can see all of your jobs, you can see all of your log files, you can see everything in a really beautiful interface. And you can even see individual requests that have been made in this beautiful interface using Telescope. SocialLite allows you to authenticate using different platforms. So, for example, Facebook, what are the other ones? Google, basically anything really. They're all available too with SocialLite. So this ecosystem of Laravel is just mind-boggling, and I'm only showing you the official Laravel packages. This is all official Laravel packages created by the team. Most of it free. Some of the stuff like Forge and Spark has to be paid due to the nature of the product. And Vapor, you can't really have something like that for free because they have to pay for servers and stuff like that, and that's how they make money. But the framework itself is open source. I really think that Laravel is it's just one of the most mind-bogglingly. It's an anomaly. That's the best way to put it. It's an anomaly. It's a framework where the creator has somehow managed to consistently improve it um, for the past like 10 years plus of his life. He just keeps plugging away and making it better and better. And the framework is so ridiculously solid that he's been able to build all of this amazing stuff on top of it. So all of this is just part of the story. There's also the fact that the framework itself is just mind-bogglingly good. It's so wonderful to develop with. In fact, Vuex ORM, its API is based off of the Laravel Eloquent API, how they deal with models behind the scenes. So anyway, you guys are here to learn about the composition APIs. I just wanted to go on that tangent because Laravel gets me so excited. But yeah, thank you so much for sticking with me. I really enjoy doing these videos. And I'll see you in a future video where we'll talk about something else. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I never know how to end these. Check out quasarcomponents.com if you want to learn every single Quasar component. I guess I should probably do that plug. Let's add the little banner as well. Where is it? quasarcomponents.com. That's my site where I teach you all 72 plus of Quasar's components. So definitely check that out. And I'll see you in a future live stream. Thank you so much for sticking along with me. Bye for now. Love you guys. You're the best.